everybody, and welcome back to the video, another reaction video, and yet another video recommended to me by a viewer of mine. They wanted me to watch Trekkers, the sound of 16-bit, and I have no clue what these videos are about. This is gonna be a first time watch of this video specifically, and we are going to see what this video is specifically about. If I have anything to say, then I'll be sure to pause the videos, because I did have a comment telling me that they wanted me to pause the videos so they can understand me a lot more clear when it comes to these things. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I do pause them, say something. So obviously I'm going to say some things under my breath whenever I'm watching the videos during, but definitely when it comes to something more drastic, I will say something of the source. I hope that I have music in the backgrounds of whenever there's no video playing, and then and then have the audio play between those sections, so there's actually audio. And it's a lot easier to, you know, listen to my voice whenever I'm doing these kind of things, because, I don't know, it just feels like hearing my voice without anything in the background just seems weird. But we'll see how it goes. If you guys want to, like, if you guys don't want me to put music in the background any time that I talk, then I won't. If it is, then I will add it. But for now, let's go ahead and watch Trekkers, the sound of 16-bit by Ahoy.
If you've ever pirated any software, and I know you have, then you might be familiar with keygens. They are small applications designed with only two functions. The first is to deliver a serial number for your ill-gotten program, and the second is to play some fantastic music. The question is, why? Why does software piracy have such a great soundtrack? Where does this music come from? And how's it made? The answer is something called the tracker. Trackers are a way of creating music on a computer that dates to the early 16-bit era, and there's a lot more to them than just keygen music. Let me take you back to around 1984. It is the dawn of 16-bit computing. Apple released the Macintosh this year. IBM, the 286-based PC-AT. By 1985, the Atari ST and Commodore Amiga were available as well. These were all 16-bit machines, and they all boasted superior capabilities to 8-bit micros like the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. They were faster, with higher resolution graphics, more RAM, more storage. Overall, a big step up. But perhaps one area in which these new machines were lacking was sound. IBM's were designed for an office environment, and the best they could manage at the time was the PC speaker, harsh 1-bit tones. The Macintosh was great for desktop publishing, with a superb graphical user interface and high-resolution monochrome display. But its sound was underwhelming. A single channel governed by the video signal and heavy on the CPU. The Atari ST was better in that it had a dedicated sound chip, the Yamaha YM2149. It had 3 tone channels with a noise generator, which was better than the Mac or PC, but still very much of the 8-bit era. The MSX and 128K ZX Spectrum had the same chip, and the Commodore 64 SID was far superior. The ST also came equipped with MIDI ports as standard, which did mean it found a niche in music production. Cubase got its start here, for instance. But as far as native audio is concerned, these machines didn't bring anything new. Sound was a bit of an afterthought. There would be later upgrades and expansions. AdLib and Sound Blaster cards for the PC arrived by the end of the decade, and later Macintoshes and the Atari ST-E brought comparable upgrades to these platforms' sound. But in 1985, there was only one exception. I've said it before, but the Amiga was a bit of a multimedia powerhouse.
So wait, what do we... Okay, hold on. I'm like, kind of like... My brain is kind of scrambled here. What is this about? Introduction, the dawn of 60-bit computing, multimedia powerhouse, early Amiga software, sound monitoring, the ultimate sound tracker. Wait, is this about like 16-bit in general, or 16-bit as music, or 16-bit as graphics only? Is it like all together?
And unlike its rivals, it had sound capability worthy of a new generation.
Hold on.
It had a custom chip called Paula,
I'm trying to
responsible
figure
for
this
the
out 'cause my
ports,
brain is just
audio,
not there.
UART, and logic. And it was capable of 4 channels of 8-bit PCM
okay.
audio,
That's
reading sound data direct from memory without taxing the CPU. By modern standards, this is unremarkable. But for 1985, it was pretty revolutionary.
Listening.
Having such capabilities is one thing. Exploiting them is another entirely. Upon its release, the Amiga had a desperate need for audio software, and Commodore were ill-equipped to supply it.
Random talk here. By the way, I am doing videos, so if I come off of, for the people who are watching this video, I stream. For the people that are streaming, I miss you too, IJO. For the people who are watching, okay, my bad. I'm scrambling my brain here because I'm also talking to chat. For the people who are on the video, I stream. So I will be talking to chat sometimes. For the people who are streaming, we do videos for YouTube. So you can do it. I was a femboy breeder. Thank you. Sadly for you, this model's not a femboy. I am male, but the character is not male.
Oh shit, hey YouTube.
I hope YouTube can hear you guys talking, because then I'm gonna be talking out of my ass. No, they can hear you. But no, interestingly enough, we're watching 16-bit.
They had planned a suite of productivity software for launch, but only a text editor and art package made it to release. TextCraft and GraphicCraft. There was a music application planned, predictably called MusicCraft, but it wasn't finished and never saw the light of day. A company called Aegis bought the rights to MusicCraft, however, and developed the software further, eventually releasing it as Sonics in 1986. Check out the box art. How vaporwave is that? Anyway, it was quite ambitious, incorporating a software synthesizer with a sequencer. Everything is represented with full musical score, keys and time signatures, so if you know music, it's a fairly natural environment to work with.
That's so simplistic.
The synthesizer is neat. Perhaps.
Look how fucking simplistic this is, dude.
The top left thingy there, Kappa.
So tell me, Yuffie, how am I? Oh, so you know, sequitur, random sequitur here. So if you're wondering why I have a random name up in the corner above, just randomly saying Big Kuma, these are actually my Patreon subscribers. Excuse me, I need to breathe here. I talk and then I exercise and then I fucking, it's hard for me today. If you're interested to have your name above here, I don't have a hand motion to show you guys. Up above,
Patreon plug.
You can subscribe. You can subscribe to my Patreon. We do have a bunch of different little things that you can try. A bunch of little fuck. Why did you make me exercise, brother? Holy fuck! It's hard to think. Oh, I fucking hate you. I actually fucking hate you. I'm trying to fucking plug in and I can't fucking focus. You know, let's just watch the video. Okay, no way, I can plug this. If you want your name up above in the corner, you can come on ahead and subscribe to my Patreon. The link is always below. You can take a look at it. All the money that I get from my Patreon is specifically for my comic that you can read in both Webtoons, Tapas, Pixiv, and on Patreon too. You can look at it right there. We do have pages at least every bi-weekly and early access for the people who would want to pay a little bit more just to do that. None of the Patreon rewards are above 2 digits except for the $10 and the $100 reward, which those two are the $100 reward is for the people who really want to just like be, you know, help me out with this kind of thing. And for the other ones are just there to make sure that I have something to generate and give you guys, you know. It is definitely, there are a ton of rewards that you, oh, not a ton of rewards. I'm being, well, actually there's a couple rewards that you get early access. You get voting privileges for the models that I'm going to be setting up. So, not just the comic stuff, but pinups that I'm going to be posting on there. You can vote on which design you would like to see the most be picked for that, as well as behind the scenes stuff that I post every once in a while, whether small lore bits on the current story, future stories, or other stories, or just random lore splurts that I have for Eufys or designs that I just randomly have, and stories that may come up. Hey, and if you like them a lot and you really, really do enjoy some of these stories, I might end up just making them into comics because I really do like making stories. So current one that we're messing with is the Crown Nexus, and the one that we're going to be making later on in the future, which I'm working with one of the rabbits, their name is Ko, is the Magical Girl story that I'm going to be doing with Magical Girl Yuffie. So yeah, there's that. Let's continue on with the video.
Not the easiest thing to use. While it can generate some interesting sounds, it's primitive. It has quite a synthetic character. Sonics did see some use by early Amiga musicians. There are a few music discs that use the format, but it was quickly replaced by better alternatives over the next couple of years. Also releasing in 1986, Electronic Arts ported Will Harvey's earlier music construction set to the Macintosh and Amiga, and this new version was called Deluxe Music Construction Set. It lacked a programmable synthesizer, but offered a full MIDI-compliant set of instruments.
It's crazy to see this and to see how fucking simplistic this is. This is super fucking simple. Holy shit, like this is... I've messed with Fruity Loops and like of the sorts, and it's just so much to look at. And then you look at this and you're just like, wow. This is how like you like I don't know, maybe this is how you created music like back in the day when you were like making things for like Castlevania and shit. And that is insane.
And had a similar notation-based interface to Sonic's. Driven by a window-based GUI, you could drag notes.
It kind of looks like it's for kids, but at the same time, you realize that these are things that were, I think these are things that were used during the time where people were actually making music for things like those big titles like Castlevania, Super Mario, and all this stuff. So in a way, I mean, programs never really grow up, you know. They become more complicated, but they definitely, these things don't really grow as much as you really think they do. If you start playing with stuff like this as a kid, then you grow up, you tend to keep the skills and continue on doing stuff like this. So interesting.
It's where you wanted them on the staves.
They just get
both Sonics and Deluxe Music Construction Set were welcome introductions for those wanting to make music with the Amiga in 1986. But they were far from a perfect solution. Their interfaces were clumsy, sacrificing speed and ease of use for traditional notation. The sounds they produced weren't exactly spectacular either. These early music packages had a critical flaw. They were designed for musicians. This doesn't seem like a bad thing on the face of it, but making music on these early machines was a two-part problem. First is creation, which these programs covered, but the second is playback. To be useful, you need to integrate closely with the sound hardware. You need to expose the potential of the machine directly, instead of trying to adapt it to a more conventional music format. To accomplish this, you need a different approach. Most early computer musicians...
So wait, hold on a minute. So you're telling me that the only reason why it was so much weirder to make music back in the day was because you actually had to study how musical scores worked? That's crazy. That's pretty interesting though. Like imagine back in the day when it was like the only complication technically was you learning how to read music off of musical sheets so you yourself can create music off of these things. That is interesting.
Were programmers first, musicians second. Effectively, they were directly instructing the sound hardware and developed custom tools and playback routines for that purpose. One example from 1986 is Chris Hulsbeck's sound monitor for the Commodore 64. It was released as a type-in program in German magazine Wir und Sexiger. Enter 5 full pages of hexadecimal data without making a mistake, and a very capable piece of music software was your reward. Sound Monitor was not particularly easy to use, certainly not for beginners, but behind its spreadsheet-like interface lay the power of the Commodore 64 SID. And with a little expertise, you could make it do incredible things. It was to music editing what Vim is to text editors. Obtuse, inscrutable, but in the right hands, extremely powerful. Not only could you arrange notes, but you could shape their sound with envelopes, filters, pulse width modulation, vibrato. A far cry from simple beeps.
Bro,
There was also an
what the
arpeggio
fuck?
feature. With the SID's 3-voice limitation, chords were quite...
Is this... Wouldn't this technically be a lot more complicated to do than using what it was before? Like, holy shit, you even pulled up a menu on a separate fucking screen to do these things. Dude, I'm kind of glad that technology has kind of progressed the way that it is now, because imagine having to do this, going to the... and then going to a separate menu to switch to certain notes, go back into this, place, do it, do another thing, fucking go into another tree, go into another menu, get into this thing, do it. Oh my god.
challenging. With an arpeggio, you could play the chord notes in a very rapid succession, giving an acoustic impression of the chord.
But this allows samples.
It wasn't a perfect
yeah,
rendition,
but
but only
still,
occupied a
it's
single
crazy.
channel. And these arpeggiated chords have a very distinct sound, one very typical of SID music. Hulsbeck's music for the Commodore 64 was used in a number of commercial games, and his work remains very well regarded. Sound Monitor served as a starting point for many other computer musicians, and the program inspired clones such as Rock Monitor. It would also prove influential on other platforms, most notably in tandem with the new potential of the Commodore Amiga. At some point in 1986, a German programmer and computer musician named Carsten Abarski bought himself a new Amiga 1000. A friend of his was working on a game, and he asked Carsten if he could help with the soundtrack. Having dabbled a little with the Amiga sound hardware, he obliged, and by mid-1987, he had finished the first version of his music software. It was called the Ultimate Sound Tracker, although really it was the first of its type, the very first tracker. Abarski took much inspiration from the Commodore
Looks like a
64's
game,
Sound
bro.
Monitor. It retained the bare bones,
It's so crazy how things used to look back in the day, because I'm looking at this and I'm just like, in a way, this kind of looks like a game. It kind of looks like a, I don't know, like you ever look at like an RPG game, like an RPG stat block, like a little page or something, or even like the digital ones where it just comes up with like a bunch of song name, sample name, fucking patterns, just play, stop, you know, fucking have like stats right here. It's kind of what it looks like. to me.
spreadsheet-like editor, only instead of being tailored to the SID, the Ultimate Sound Tracker exposed the potential of the Amiga's Paula. Abarski used his new program to write the soundtrack for a number of games from Reline Software, Arkanoid clone Amagas and its follow-up Crystal Hammer. He also worked with publisher EAS Computer Technic, providing the music for Rally Master. EAS showed interest in marketing the Ultimate Sound Tracker, and it was released as a commercial product in December 1987.
Oh, dude, this is way before I was
Now
even
at version
born.
1.21,
God damn.
the Ultimate Sound Tracker was ready to hit the mainstream. The software shipped on 2 discs. The first, labelled ST00, which contained the program, and ST01, which contained the samples. You could use up to 15 sampled instruments across 4 channels. Songs were divided into patterns, which had 64 rows of note data each. And these patterns could be arranged and repeated if necessary.
Oh.
The bottom of the screen was occupied by the pattern editor, split into the 4 separate channels. Headings at the top suggested the channel role, melody, accompaniment, bass, percussion, but these were just suggestions, and samples could be triggered any way you liked.
Oh, what the
The note data looks a little daunting at first. It's an array of hexadecimal. The first 3 columns indicate the note and octave, and the other 4 are used for the instrument, commands, and parameters. The first column was the sample ID. The next could specify a command, arpeggio, portamento, modulation, etc. And the last 2 provide the parameters for that command. Program status was communicated through the color of the cursor. Grey was ready, blue for pattern editing, purple was for editing text fields, green for loading, yellow for playback, and red for errors.
So, what does that mean? That okay, so the middle area is where you kind of edit it, right? And then the next one you go into the next one, and then you kind of add that, and then each one is its own note basically, and it plays as together, and each one that comes in, it kind of just, It's kind of like a tap, you know? Like the tap is one fucking block, right? And then you keep tapping depending on the, like, you know, how fast the thing is. And then it kind of continues on playing its notes, its fucking thing. That's interesting. That's such an interesting way of doing it. But then again, it's still very complicated.
Its interface was idiosyncratic, to say the least, and its hardware demands quite specific. It needed 2 drives, used a German key map, and would only work with Kickstart 1.2. For example, if you wanted to load a song, you had to type the file name into the song name field, press return, click the load song button, then press the L key to start loading. Your sample disk had to be in the second drive, otherwise the program would hang. In fact, the program was plagued with bugs, and if you weren't careful, it was easy to lose your work.
It really sucks.
There was clear potential in Soundtracker, but its temperamental nature made it frustrating to work with. One of Soundtracker's strengths was its sample disk, ST01. Samples are key to the operation of a tracker. Without them, there's no sound. Karsten's sample disk contained a good selection of digitized sounds, 126 in total, which he recorded from his synthesizers.
Oh, okay.
They provided a great starting point for musicians, and while you could use any samples you wanted, this bank proved extremely popular for years afterwards. Some came from a Roland D50, others from a Yamaha DX and a Casio CZ. These were contemporary synthesizers that were often used in music from the late 80s and early 90s, and contribute to the synth-poppy sound that many later Amiga tracks had. Taking one example, Pizza is a pizzicato string sampled from a Roland D50, and according to the Amiga database Mod Sample Master, it was used in hundreds, if not thousands of tracks. The same is true for most of the sounds on the disc, and ultimately, by providing these samples, Karsten didn't just give Soundtracker users a great start, he defined the sound of the Amiga. As a commercial product, the Ultimate Soundtracker was not a huge success. The Amiga market wasn't particularly big in 1987, and the software only saw release in Germany. I've never seen a copy for sale, and the only evidence it ever existed are a few photographs.
Oh shit.
So Soundtracker didn't make its mark as a commercial product.
You know, if you think about it, if you ever have these like products on you, if you're just like one of those lucky people who have ever gotten one of these things are technically collector's items. So you're probably like fucking looking at like thousands of dollars just for these items alone. Like these are fucking like, this is advancements in technology, in music technology that have been going forth and doing things for the longest amount of time. It is crazy. This is what Fruity, this is basically what started, this is basically how it started with what sound designs we currently have as of now. All of this. That's cool.
For a number of reasons, but perhaps the most significant reason is software piracy.
Oh no.
In fact, what happened to Soundtracker goes far beyond piracy. It was outright pillaged.
Damn, that's rude.
It's at this point I should probably explain what the demo scene is. It's an underground subculture that started within the context of early home computing. It was largely driven by pirated software. Disk swapping and copying was quite common practice, and everyone knew someone who could get them games for free. Any attempts at copy protection were stripped out by programmers who specialized in it, crackers. And cracked copies of games could spread far and wide via BBS, snail mail, car boot sales, or in person. This was a time before the World Wide Web and when internet access was uncommon, but nevertheless there existed an extensive distribution network. Obviously, much of this was quite illegal, so most people involved with the scene chose pseudonyms. Everything sounds cooler that way anyway. Coordination and affiliation led to the formation of scene groups, like Razor 1911, Scoopex, Skid Row, Fairlight. Many of these groups remain active today.
That's crazy.
I should note that the demo scene isn't necessarily linked to software piracy or wares, but earlier on there was a closer association. Cracking groups would often distinguish themselves with a short intro that played prior to the game loading. These crack intros or cracktros could be quite ornate and often had fantastic music. They are the precursor to contemporary keygens. Some groups put together longer, standalone productions called demos, hence demo scene. They served as a showcase for coders, artists and musicians and were often quite impressive on all fronts.
That's interesting. What the fuck?
The scene was an outlet for creativity, and it was software like Soundtracker that helped it flourish. It must have been a mix of admiration of Soundtracker's potential and frustration at its shortcomings that led to its reverse engineering shortly after its commercial release. Early in 1988, the software was disassembled by The Exterminator, a member of a Dutch group called the Jungle Command. He already had some experience with the Amiga sound hardware, having devised his own sound format called Megatracks. He took Soundtracker's code and started to incorporate a number of improvements, with a new, unofficial version called Soundtracker 2.
Oh no! That's
The overwhelmingly beige interface was presented in a much more respectable grey. Overall stability was improved, and new volume commands were added.
So it's kind of like modding.
But perhaps the biggest difference was that
It's kind of like they grabbed the program, fucking stripped it for its parts, kind of put it all back together, and then had it so they could kind of like function on its own kind of merit while still using the fucking foundations of the original product. And by the way, I do know what I'm saying. It kind of sounds like I'm talking out of my ass, but I think it works this way. But what I'm basically just saying is that they grabbed the product. They added some stuff to it to make it work. It's kind of like if you get Minecraft, right? And then you add like a bunch of like mods that fix its stability. It is still the same product, but you kind of made it so it works a little better, and it kind of does a little... You added a little bit of quality of life type stuff. You know?
Soundtracker was no longer a paid-for commercial product. It was now part of the scene, spread from disc to disc via back channels. The assembly source was shared, along with the playback routines, and other scene groups would work on their own versions, collectively iterating and improving on the original Soundtracker formula. In March 1988, Swedish coder Il Scuro of Def Jam released Soundtracker 3, which was shortly followed by Alpha Flight's version 4 in April. The most prolific group was DOC, or Dr. Mabuse Orgasm Crackings, who developed their version of Soundtracker during the middle of 1988, with a series of releases that year.
Sounds so great, it's orgasmic.
They added an equalizer display, the ability to mute channels, better file handling, and improved play routine.
It's modding. It's literally modding. Chat, they're modding the fucking thing. They're modding the program. That's fucking crazy. That's crazy to see. At this point, they're adding so much quality of life.
And the ability to save songs as modules. Modules were monolithic files that incorporated the sample data along with the song, so sample discs and a second drive were no longer a necessity. It also made it easier for musicians to use novel samples and still distribute their work. And while the trusty ST01 samples would still see heavy use, tracker modules could now be far less reliant upon them. Towards the end of 1988, DOC released Soundtracker 2.2, which by now was quite a mature piece of software, and one of the more dominant offerings amongst the nascent world of trackers. Karsten Obarski was still developing the ultimate Soundtracker, however, and in November 1988, he released version 2.0 of his original tracker. It was much improved over the earlier versions, but the collective effort of other groups had exceeded the pace of his own, and the unofficial alternatives rather overshadowed the original.
That's crazy,
Version 2 was
bro.
the last release of the Ultimate Soundtracker. Karsten would play no further role in the development of the software he had conceived. It's hard not to feel bad for him. His hard work had been ripped off, and any commercial potential evaporated. I suppose
fucking
there's some
sucks,
solace in the fact that his work, his involuntary gift, would go on to have massive influence,
Gift is so
both
funny,
on the
dude.
Amiga
That's-
and beyond.
Damn, they really kind of fucked with it all.
In his absence, the development of trackers continued. In August 1989, a Swedish duo named Mahoney and Cactus released Noise Tracker, another entry in a long line of Soundtracker clones. But there was one very important difference. It was nice to use. It's the little things, really. You could now control most functions with the keyboard, so switching into edit mode, changing samples, laying down notes, and playing the pattern to hear your changes could all be done with the keys. You could now use up to 31 samples instead of 15, and the Amiga's low-pass filter, which was designed to reduce sample aliasing but muffled the output slightly, was automatically disabled. It handled like a dream, and it should be no surprise that Noise Tracker quickly became the standard.
Well then. So
by now, there was a growing pool of...
So basically, the whole thing that happened is that the original one basically got cracked. Just like a lot of games do. Like, cracking programs has been around for a fucking long time. And it was shared about. I'm not going to go into the history of cracking, but it has been around for a very long time. But basically, they've grabbed the item and they've changed it over and over again. But the interesting part about it is it kind of still relates to... Because I love modding. I love modding as a creator and as somebody who just like loves to play games. I have always enjoyed modding things, and I've always looked at it as just a means of making the game to continue the life of a game for longer amounts of time, whether if it's aesthetics or actual gameplay changes. So like, for instance, my Minecraft and my Fallout 4, I mod the living fuck out of them. I love to fucking look at the mods that the community has made and add them into the game and then continue on prolonging the game. Because to be fair, Fallout doesn't have much of a lifespan. It's not too, it is a fun game. The gameplay is great, but it definitely doesn't last as long as a lot of other games do. Like New Vegas, you can have multiple playthroughs, but like at some point you look at it and you're just like, damn dude, like I've had so much fun with this game. I really wish that there was like a means of like, you know, like continuing on playing the game. I love the game. I love Minecraft. I love all these. I love Fallout. I love New Vegas. I love all these games and I want to play them more. But like playing them just as Fallout kind of gets a little tedious sometimes. So you kind of have to like look through meaningful ways to do that. And mods just have done that. Like imagine all the things that you can do. So back to this though. It's just funny to see because that's what's happened. They've gained the program and they've gotten it and they've made a whole bunch of quality of life like modifications to the game itself, not the game, but to the program itself to make it just a lot more streamlined to use, like a save system, a fucking like equalizer. Like these are things that they didn't have before, added more to it, which sucks too because then the original programmer was kind of like intending to like sell the product, but after a while of the product just, you know, being cracked and stuff, it's just like that kind of fell through. But the influence is still there. It's just like, damn, dude, it's done a lot. And a lot of other people outside, like within the community, have just created a lot more. This is literally the beginning of what quality of life mods became, you know? It's crazy.
Talented musicians who work with Soundtracker and its derivatives. And with its lightweight and accessible playback routine, this led to the format's adoption in games. There were many different music formats used on the Amiga, but from 1989 onwards, the Soundtracker format was quite dominant. Many musicians started out in the demo scene before finding work in commercial games.
That's cool.
Such as Dr. Awesome, also known as Bjorn Linner, and Cold Storage, or Tim Wright. Jesper Kid started in the demo scene as part of The Silence, but these days you might know him from his work on Assassin's Creed, Hitman, or Borderlands. The demo scene was a crucible of talent. Many coders, graphicians, musicians started their career there, and many still work in the industry today. Most tracking musicians cultivated their own style, some of which are quite distinct. For instance, the airy, fleeting melodies of Jörger Liljedahl, paired with his tight production, make his work amongst the best on the Amiga. The progressive, exciting techno works of Jester, fused with a jazz-like flair, evoke strong memories of the demo scene. Some forged new genres entirely, such as Lizard King or Gustav.
Bro, if I ever like, because I'm not in the I'm not like an artist. This is kind of just like the same thing that we were talking about in the previous reaction, where we were talking about the hacker scene and whatnot, and how different people kind of go off of certain things, and they do there's your basic, there's your average, all the way to your like kind of like your professional type stuff, and it's kind of just like it is an interesting thing to see, and I'm thinking of like, how do I say this? I'm curious to think if there's anybody who still uses these old fucking programs to create music. I don't even know if there's a way to use these programs, but I wonder if there are people out there who are just like, man, I want to revisit the old times of using this product and go back and just make fucking 16-bit shit with this stuff, dude. It's crazy.
Who pioneered a style of music called Doskpop.
Or even
the term comes from the Swedish for disco and synth combined pop.
Or even younger people who like look at this stuff and just are like, dude, I want to use the older program, and then go into just like retro settings and like practice their craft there. That would be crazy.
And it fuses disco with synth instruments for a very demo scene, very Amiga sound. Another distinct style is chip music. Today, the term chiptune is applied to all early computer music, including trackers. But in the original sense, chiptune is a far more specific term. It refers to tracker modules that emulate the style of earlier 8-bit music, particularly from the Commodore 64's SID. This was done by using small looped samples with simple waveforms, and modulating those samples with effects. This wasn't just done for nostalgia, although that is a big part. The tiny samples meant that the module's file size could be minuscule, often just a few kilobytes. This was useful for things like cracktros, where there might only be limited space on the disk.
That's so fucking interesting, dude. Like I didn't think I'd never thought of how in depth like the chiptune genre of music is, because this is kind of just like I knew people who liked that kind of music. I like that kind of music every once in a while. Whenever I get bored and I want to listen to like video game type music, I'll like listen to like a little bit of chip tunes or something like that, because it does have like a certain feeling to it, mostly nostalgia and whatnot. But it's definitely, I never thought that they'd have such a huge fucking like history of like its evolution, especially within its like program itself. It's very interesting.
Pioneer of this style was Matthew Simmons, or Format, with his work adorning many intros. Although plenty of others composed in this style, and the arpeggiated raw synths are a common sound you'll hear in tracker music. Efficient use of space has always been valued by the demo scene. You wouldn't think you could do much with something like 4 kilobytes, but there's an entire category of demos set out to prove you wrong. As time ticked on and the 90s arrived, Soundtracker's bloodline continued, of course, and Noise Tracker reached version 2.0 in July 1990. This would be the final version, although there were plenty of other offshoots. Most significant of those was Pro Tracker, coded by Zap of Amiga freelancers. The first version released in October 1990, although by all accounts it was full of bugs. Later versions smoothed things over though, and by the end of 1991, Pro Tracker was a more than worthy alternative to Noise Tracker. Eventually it would carry significant enhancements, including a higher resolution display, integrated sample editor, and improved editing tools. There do exist trackers that aren't direct descendants of Soundtracker, and amongst the most important is Teo Kinnunen's MED, short for Music Editor. Its first release was in 1989, although early versions of the program didn't really offer much that other trackers couldn't, and it used its own
huge amount of shit that's been going on, all these changes to the fucking the music making ways of this kind of stuff. I'm still not born yet. Like, holy shit.
Format that wasn't compatible with Soundtracker. Version 2 was almost entirely rewritten and added MIDI support along with additional editing features. MED had a niche as a quirky Soundtracker alternative with some neat features, but it was the later Octamed that really stood out. The Amiga was limited to 4 hardware channels, but it is possible to mix sounds in software at a cost of CPU time. On a basic Amiga, you only had a 7 MHz processor, so software mixing wasn't often done. 8 channels were feasible, however, splitting each hardware channel into 2. This did increase CPU usage. Soundtracker modules occupied about 3% of available CPU time, whereas an 8-channel Octamed song could use 20%. Nevertheless, the extra channels were useful for musicians. The ability to form complex chords and incorporate more instruments, along with MIDI support, meant that Octamed found favour with computer musicians.
That's interesting.
By this time, trackers were starting to become more mainstream. My first exposure to them was on a cover disc of Amiga format. So you no longer needed to be part of the scene to hear about them. They were accessible to everyone. For many people, this was their introduction to electronic music production. You no longer needed studio gear worth thousands. You could get by with a cheap home computer and a copy of ProTracker. Most commercial music was still done in the studio, the old-fashioned way. But in the underground scenes like rave, jungle and techno,
Kind of makes me wonder if the background music that we've been listening to has just been an evolution of like style. Now, obviously, I don't think that they're using the old school. They're not using the old school programs to make the music as they continue. But I'm kind of wondering if they're slowly evolving the music as they're talking about them, as it's getting more and more recent to the programs that they're using. I'm just curious. I don't know if they're doing that. I don't know if they're not. It's just to be funny. It'd be crazy.
LOL, wait for the credits.
trackers were becoming quite significant.
No way!
The Prodigy used ProTracker. Aphrodite, Busy Bee, DJ Zinc, Aphex Twin and Venetian Snares all used trackers too. Darude made the first version of Sandstorm in a tracker. Calvin Harris produced the entirety of I Created Disco using Octamed. Today, computers are an essential part of any music studio, and the digital audio workstation is the central tool for most of the production process. But in the 90s, trackers offered a taste of this future. Later Amigas had more powerful CPUs, so software mixing and more than 8 channels became a possibility. A retargetable audio subsystem called 8G permitted 14-bit stereo sound on the Amiga's hardware. A neat trick that used 2 8-bit channels with one at a lower volume to reproduce the least significant bits. Some later trackers used 8G to support a large number of channels. Octamed's Sound Studio supported up to 64. DigiBooster supported 254.
Oh shit.
You could use 16-bit samples and more of them. You were really only limited by available RAM. The 4-channel, 15-sample limit of Soundtracker was long gone. But so too was the Amiga's heyday. By the mid-90s, Commodore was bankrupt, and the Amiga was in an inevitable decline.
Sorry, I spit my water.
Trackers would live on, however, but it was time to hand over to the PC. When Soundtracker first came out, and the Amiga was starting to enjoy its potential, it's fair to say that PC audio was in rather a sorry state. In 1987, most PCs weren't equipped with sound cards. Instead, users had to endure the 1-bit bleeps of the PC speaker. This was originally designed to provide.
And bro, I'm looking at this and it reminds me of like the first PC that I got from like when my dad came in and like handed us a TV. It was a desktop. It was your regular ass old desktop. And the only games we played on them were like Flash games and fucking RuneScape. Mind you, RuneScape was like the biggest one. Also, that was the time that I learned about hentai. I was like 13. No, 12? Fuck. It's been a while. So when I started using the computer during this time,
when Compaq had
I was using Newgrounds. I was using Newgrounds and I was getting used to like the whole entire thing. It was an interesting time. Look, I'm about to fucking spill some shit, and if you feel uncomfortable with what I'm talking about, then I mean there's like plenty of things that you can do than watch me. But yeah. Trying to make me feel old. Newgrounds is still a thing, by the way. Newground is still a thing. It's still going on. There's still content going on. It's crazy, but I'm telling you, like during the time that I used to go to Newgrounds, I used to play games there. I actually learned about games through there too. Besides that, I also looked at like games like Evolution of Humans or whatever the fuck that game was. Castle Crashers was one when I saw that game. There was a lot of games that I used to play. There's an RPG game where you're like this green person thing and you had to like beat a bunch of guards and whatnot. I forgot what it was. It was an RPG game. I played Pico School. I played a lot of those games. And like the game that I always end up playing a lot of the time when I was younger was like RuneScape. And this is when we first got the computer. And then when I didn't have the computer, I would just go back to play the Nintendo 64, which by the way was my second console that I played. The first console that I played was a Super Nintendo, which I actually ended up playing Street Fighter on.
Being posted on Newgrounds.
It's a Numa guy meme being posted on Newgrounds. I saw that one, and then I remember seeing like a parody where like he became a tentacle monster. I don't fucking know, dude. That shit was a trip. It was a lot of shit during that time that I couldn't understand, but it was an interesting time period. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of like, Bloons Tower Defense, Vector Defense, a lot of tower defense games I played during that time. I played a point and click game where it was just like fucking surreal. I can't even describe it. It was very like, it was like horror, but at the same time, it was just like it didn't have jump scares to be like horror, but there was a lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. There's a word for it. It's not egotistical. Whatever the word is, I'll figure it out later. But it was an interesting one, definitely. Not gonna lie.
Simple audio notifications for programs, error beeps and the such like. You could funnel game audio through the speaker, but the results weren't pretty. The addition of dedicated sound hardware soon became a necessity, and so hardware like the Creative Music System, the Ad-Lib Music Synthesizer card, and the expensive Gravis Ultrasound started populating PC slots and providing the soundtracks for games. These cards were essentially synthesizers geared towards the playback of MIDI music. While they provided generous polyphony, their instrument banks were effectively hard-coded, so they demanded a different approach than sample-based music. MIDI music could sound radically different depending on what sound card you had. So it was more difficult for composers to control exactly what was heard. They were essentially supplying sheet music instead of a recording. This gives PC music of this era a distinct sound. Not unpleasant by any means, but slightly reminiscent of a cheap keyboard in demo mode.
You got the fucking art with me. This is the second time you've gotten it too. Congratulations. And you still have VIP, so I don't have to give it to you.
There are certain advantages to using samples, and these become quite apparent within certain genres. Electronic styles, such as techno, really don't fare well with these standard MIDI instrument banks, so you can see why someone might want to bring trackers to the PC. In 1990, Finnish coder Sami Tamileto of Future Crew did just that with Scream Tracker. Early versions were a bit rough, even by tracker standards. It runs in DOS text mode and is entirely driven by the keyboard, but it works.
I'm gonna hire a different artist for yours because you have Strong Woman, and I need to find somebody who does Strong Woman. So we'll see who does it. I definitely gotta do it soon. Oh my God, Kuma! Thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. God, I love that. I need to get more of my friends to do cha-chings. I'm so mad. That was Para, by the way.
Mostly.
But no sub.
The important thing was that now PC owners had a tracker of their own, one that matched or exceeded Soundtracker's baseline. In 1994, by the time Screen Tracker 3 came out, things were much improved. You could use up to 16 channels, and there was enhanced support for different sound cards. Version 3 also introduced a new module format, S3M, which proved a popular format for multi-track songs on the PC. The interface was still text-based, an odd shade of beige, and everything still driven by the keyboard, but it was quite usable and a lot more stable. It took a while for the demo scene to be taken seriously on the PC. While a 486 equipped with a VGA card and sound card was vastly more powerful than an Amiga 500, the lack of a standard configuration meant that it was more difficult to hit the hardware directly, and a sense of tradition meant there was considerable inertia when it came to switching platforms. attitudes changed when Future Crew released Second Reality, a demo for the PC with both impressive visuals and a fantastic soundtrack by Purple Motion and Skaven. The music was done in...
It's crazy to think where somebody says, more intense visuals or something of the like. They're always referring to, mind you, this is like back in the day, they're referring to like going from 16-bit to 32-bit. It's crazy. So crazy to say.
Dream Tracker, of course. The demo was very much inspired by work done on the Amiga. Many of the effects were familiar. But the performance differential between the Amiga and PC at this time meant that things were just a little bit more. The demo scene has always been about pushing the limits of hardware, but Second Reality broke through anything the Amiga had done before. For me, it marks a handover of the scene from the Amiga to PC, a new era with new limits to exceed. Of course, the Amiga demo scene continued. Although doomed and commercially extinct, the platform still had plenty to offer, and I'm pleased to say the Amiga scene continues to this day. But as more and more people bought PCs, the platform became the primary choice, and soon there would be a number of trackers to choose from. A demo group called Triton released Fast Tracker at the end of 1992, with support for 8 channels. A worthy alternative to Scream Tracker 2 at the time, but it was the later Fast Tracker 2 that made the most impact.
That's insane, dude.
Released in November 1994, it introduced the XM module format, which permitted
I
up
keep
to...
looking at this roll and it just makes me think that you're looking at this in a technical sense and you don't even know what the fuck is going on. But for me, I'm looking at this, I'm just like, I'm pretty sure there's music playing every time this thing rolls out, like over and over again, like you just hear tunes coming out of this. Obviously, it's not the tunes that are being played in the background, but like that's probably a tune being played right now.
32 channels. Its interface was very much traditional tracker, heavily inspired by Pro Tracker, and unlike Scream Tracker, it supported a mouse and was a little bit easier to use. Of course, some preferred Scream Tracker, decrying the single-screen mouse-driven interface, so there was a certain rivalry. Another popular alternative was Impulse Tracker, which released in 1995. Its interface closely resembles Scream Tracker, but it incorporates a number of improvements, such as the envelopes and multi-samples from Fast Tracker 2, and support for up to 64 channels. Impulse Tracker modules had the .it file extension, and these, along with XM and S3M modules, comprise the majority of PC tracker modules you'll find. So now, PC users had 3 very capable trackers to choose from, and there exists some very impressive work from this era, far exceeding anything done with the 4-channel limitation on the Amiga. But there was a bit of a problem faced by tracker music in the mid-90s. The increasing prevalence of CD-ROM was rather eroding their advantages. With CD audio, you no longer needed to be constrained by number of channels, samples, or CPU-bound playback. You could simply play recorded audio from the CD, full-quality digital audio with no CPU time required. Worse, you no longer needed to employ adept users of weird tracker software to compose your soundtracks. You could turn to actual musicians instead.
Oh shit.
So, just as soon as the limitations on tracked music were lifted, the practical need for trackers almost entirely evaporated. From an overhead perspective, music in PC games shifted from MIDI to CD audio. Tracker music was just some offbeat fringe. But there are a few notable exceptions. Back in 1993, there was a man named Tim Sweeney, founder of a company called Epic Mega Games, who was particularly enamored with the work Future Crew were doing with their PC demos. Tim wanted to...
You said Epic Mega Games, and my ass thinking, wait, Tim Sweeney, like the Tim Sweeney that keeps fucking up, like now? That Tim Sweeney? Fuck me. I didn't think I'd hear his name in this fucking shit, dude. That guy's been fucking everything up now. It makes me fucking... I gotta hear this. I hear this.
Of the current Epic Games.
Hire them to work on games. Epic sponsored Assembly 93, a demo party, and courted the team behind Future Crew. They weren't interested. The scene is anti-commercial, not really motivated by profit. but they did show them an unfinished pinball game they'd been working on. Epic persuaded them to finish it so it could be released, but their other commitments meant they weren't able to. Instead, a Canadian developer named James Schmaltz made his own pinball game for Epic, called Epic Pinball. Its soundtrack was made in Screen Tracker. James Schmaltz went on to found Digital Extremes, and bolstered by the success of Epic Pinball, started work on a new game, a first-person shooter. This game was Unreal, which released in 1998. A spectacular-looking game, but also noteworthy on account of its music. Its entire soundtrack was tracker music. Good stuff, too. A collaboration between Alexander Brandon, also known as Siren, Michael van den Bos, or MCA, Andrew Sega, known as Necros, and Dan Gardape, or Basshead. Unreal Tournament was the same. Deus Ex, too. And honestly, this music holds up really well. It's an evolutionary spur that can trace its roots back to the Amiga, right back to Karsten Abarski's Soundtracker. These days, there's no compelling reason to use tracker music directly in games. Even if you compose in a tracker, converting to a digital recording makes much more sense. It's easier to master and play back. The few that do so out of a desire for authenticity. The only contemporary example I can think of is retro revival shooter Ion Fury, which features music by Finnish tracker Jarkko Rothsten.
No, when am I playing that game? That looks cool.
That's not to say trackers are extinct, of course. There exist quite a few contemporary trackers for musicians who desire the old school cachet, or who simply prefer the direct mode of editing. One of the earliest trackers for Windows was Modplug Tracker, the first version of which came out in 1997. Today, it's an open source project known as OpenMPT. It's a free, capable tracker with a standard Windows interface. Mad Tracker is another alternative for Windows that first emerged around the same time, although it's no longer in active development. For those who want to preserve the old school feel of DOS, there's Milky Tracker, a modern option in the Fast Tracker 2 mold. Some later trackers take a modular approach, allowing you to chain instruments and effects while sequencing them with the tracker. Yeskala Buzz was the first, although other trackers take a similar approach, such as Cycle and Sunvox. If you're after a heavyweight tracker for more serious production, then Renoise is worth considering.
Dude, look at this
It's not free, but it's a capable digital audio.
Like I'm looking at I'm remembering the ones that we saw at the past, dude, and then looking at it now, and it's just so fucking crazy to look at. Like, holy shit, I kind of want to do it myself, but like, I don't know, I don't have the fucking time nor patience to learn this shit.
Workstation centered on its tracker interface. If you're interested in making chiptunes, there are options designed around emulating specific sound hardware. FamiTracker, for instance, lets you compose music for the NES. There are native options too. Little Sound DJ is a tracker that runs on the Game Boy for an authentic chiptune sound that fits in your pocket. There's even hardware implementations of trackers. The Polyend tracker and XOR NerdSynth are two examples. So clearly, trackers have a certain amount of admiration within the music community. They represent the old school, an important part of early computer music. Trackers exist in a narrow slice of its history, wedged between the synthetic sounds of PSGs and the age of CD-ROM. They gave computer musicians the ability to express themselves in an entirely novel way, and were both affordable and accessible, allowing a new wave of talent to flourish. There's something intangibly different about music made this way. Perhaps it's because, instead of a digital recording played back, the music is assembled in real time. Notes and instruments, modulation, effects. In essence, trackers are a performance. It's the sound of...
I thought all music was technically made in real time, you know? Like, I didn't think that there was... Like, is it somebody actively pressing buttons on the keyboard and just fucking playing it like a fucking piano? Like, what?
16-bit. There's nothing quite like it. So, the next time you pirate any software, not that you should, As the keygen does its thing, maybe pause a moment and listen. There's a lot of history there. If you're interested in hearing more tracker music, YouTube isn't a terrible place to start. There are plenty of recordings and compilations there. If you want the original modules, then the Mod Archive is a good repository. VLC has playback support for a wide range of tracker formats. Most modern trackers should be able to import the common module formats, and with those you'll be able to play around with the instruments and patterns of the songs and see how they're constructed. Modern ports of both Pro Tracker and Fast Tracker 2 exist if you'd like to keep it old school. If you'd like to know more about the demo scene, again, there are plenty of demo recordings on YouTube, or you could download the original demos and run them, either on hardware or through an emulator. WinUAE for the Amiga, DOSBox for PC. There exists some comprehensive databases of scene productions. Puet.net is a fantastic resource that covers
that's a very interesting thing to hear about, because I'm like obviously I'm a fucking amateur when it comes to these things. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm just like, what? I am absorbing the information, so when I'm hearing this kind of stuff, I'm just like, oh, cool. So there is a difference. I didn't know that there's a difference. So all that when I hear live compared to like something else, like music being played on the spot, I kind of think like concerts and type of stuff. Whenever I think about this, it's kind of like the closest thing that I can ever think of, like, you know, like electronic or even chiptunes music being played like this. I kind of just think of something like you know, like a DJ set or like any of that. I didn't know that there was like, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's just
platforms. And if you're interested in the Amiga scene, then Kestra Bitworld has detailed listings of demos, including the music. If nothing else, give the Unreal Tournament soundtrack a listen. It's brilliant. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.
Oh shit. Okay, so these are from like random games and stuff, right? Oh no, from like people too. Oh shit, dude. So in a way, it was technically evolving. It was doing its thing. That's crazy. Whoa. I played Darkwood. My god, dude, never fucking ask me to play that game again. Oh, Darkwood was so fucking stressful. Fuck me. But anyway, no, that was an interesting thing. That was an interesting go at trackers, honestly. Hold on. Tracker. Ooh, okay, tracker music. Let's look at this random one. Random one here, this one. It's an hour and 55 minutes. Holy shit. Maybe just a small one, please.
They go crazy hard.
That is crazy. I was fully expecting like 8-bit music. I was fully expecting like video game ass music, which in a way it kind of sounds like that, but it's definitely that is insane. Yeah, though that's fucking insane. I'm probably gonna listen to more of this later on in the future. But anyway, that was let me go back so I can like go into the thing. Let me go back real quick. Yeah, there we go. That was Trackers, the sounds of 16-bit by Ahoy. You guys know we've reacted to one of their videos before off of it. Here is their channel, Xbox Ahoy. If you want to give them a sub and like their videos, you can. I definitely should probably be liking the videos that I look at, you know, just to make sure that I kind of like, you know, am supporting their channels, even if I am just looking at them just for the content. But yeah, no, Hawaii has a ton of interesting videos. It's like it's like watching mini documentaries of random little things in here and there. But yeah, thank you for coming by. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And we might be coming out with a lot more random things to react to, so expect much more of that kind of content around, and hopefully. And also for the people here, thank you for 100 subs. Maybe I should have thanked you guys a little bit before then. 104 we're at 104 subs right now. Hopefully I get more. And also if anybody wants to subscribe to the Patreon, it is there. The link is down below. You can also read the comic for free. You do not need a profile for that either. You can just read it off Patreon, or you can go ahead and Webtoons and Tapas and read it there. Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much for coming by. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right. Mwah. Love y'all. Bye everybody.